Okay, yeah, it was okay to be honest. But obviously, I'm guessing that most people will tune in for this one because you want to hear our thoughts about the opener that was a heavyweight bout. No, you guys want to listen about Topuria and Oliveira. Obviously, it was a short fight. There's still, I think, we have some interesting things to say about it, but we won't be talking like for a whole hour about it because there wasn't much to it. But we'll be talking about the rest of the card and also both fighters where they are in their careers. We get to that. Hello, please, Ken, my dude. Happy to see you around. So let's get right into the main event. So UFC 317, just your standard Las Vegas pay-per-view, headlined by former featherweight champion Ilia Topuria against former lightweight champion Charles Oliveira instead of Arman Sarukian for whatever reason. The reason is that Dana White hates Sarukian because he ruined an event. So it was still a very compelling fight. Like going into the fight, I guess the main concern for a lot of us that watch and talk about fights was the place that Oliveira is right now into his career, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Oliveira is a little past it, but he's still obviously like incredibly offensively potent. Um, and I mean, he on paper had very specific routes to victory here to enforce. And on paper, he checked a lot of boxes that you would want for someone to fight against Topuria, uh, regardless of whether Topuria was going to have trouble translating with the weight differences. Um, and I would actually say Oliveira pushed for a good majority of those things from the get go.
Yes, actually, I agree with that. I think there are some takes out there, especially from very beloved by analyst fighter Paddy Pimblet, who said that Charles Oliveira was an idiot to fight Topuria like that. But I think that pressuring for Oliveira, to be quite honest, was like his best shot at victory. He was not going to win a fight moving on the outside because that's just not who he is. Um, Maybe you could say that he could have worked that during the whole camp, but you can understand Oliveira is like 35 years old. He has like plus 40 professional MMA fights. He's not going to change the whole thing around for this one. I think when you're in that place of your career, you gotta operate with what you have. I don't know if you agree with that point.
Yeah, I think at this point, like 35, I mean, if you're not already a finished product, it's a bit hard to invent yourself, especially with someone with Oliveira's like mileage and career or trajectory. It is pretty insane that somebody who is so offensively based and so devastating has continued to remain pretty devastating after all the fights he's had and all the damage he's taken. I mean, he really did come into his own a few years ago. He's probably as comfortable as he's ever going to be. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, even in that 3 minutes, he still looked like a top lightweight.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, this might be a weird take. By the way, James Kendrick, hello. This might be a strange take, but I think that Oliveira here, to me, he looked more of an elite talent here in these few minutes that he lost than what he looked at places against Michael Chandler in a fight where he was dominating. Because one of my concerns going into this fight is that Oliveira did not look as dynamic in that Chandler fight. I think he looked a bit faster over in this one, to be quite honest.
It's something I had in the back of my mind. The only other explanation, if he wasn't regressed, was he was playing with his food to get like 5 rounds of experience because he hadn't really gone that distance before.
Yeah,
And
that
Chandler
that could
wasn't
be.
pushing, but I mean, I do think even in the Sarukian fight, there were some things that were kind of a little less potent than he used to be.
Yeah, but I think he looked dangerous. If you go back and watch the fight, um, Oliveira looked like he had some pop. Obviously, Topuria is like a very aware fighter, and obviously he has a decent chin, but a lot of having a good chin has to do with being aware and seeing shots coming. And but actually, like, Topuria didn't got hit super clean a lot in this fight. For example, there's this clip of Oliveira catching him with an elbow. I'm pretty sure um, that he caught him well, like with the forearm. So it was like, don't get me wrong, that still fucking sucks, but it's not the same as getting like nailed with the point of the elbow, right? And then the uppercut. The uppercut looked a lot worse live. During the replay, I caught that Topuria was like sidestepping. It was like more of a glancing shot, and Topuria still felt that one. So I felt like Charlie still looked pretty dangerous in this one.
Yeah, I think how Oliveira approached it was exactly what he should have done, because like Oliveira doesn't have the nuance on the back foot and can kind of just
Exactly.
be drawn into things. The only real danger on the back foot is like his intercepting like collar ties, reactive takedowns, and like that front teep. That is one thing, that last part, I do wish we got to see how that would have played out if he used that front teep a little more. But like, I think getting in Topuria's face right from the get-go was a good idea, because he still got to the areas of danger for Topuria in that fight pretty quickly. It's just Topuria ended up being able to navigate those areas a lot better than we expected, but also just he showed he had answers there at minimum.
Yeah, there was a few things. I feel like there was a few interesting things that on my preview I talked about. Collar ties were going to be like important in this fight for sure. And immediately, because if you watch the fights, I ended up never posting the clips, but I posted a few clips of Topuria exiting the clinch against Volkanovski and against Holloway, exiting collar ties. And usually what he does is like he gets low, goes with a few body shots, blades his stance, and then tries to exit safely. Here we had a collar tie immediately in the first exchange of the fight. Topuria goes with a wide left hook and pivots and goes out immediately. Like, you can tell that he drilled into fight camp. Like, we are not staying in collar ties at all.
Yeah, it's a good
And
infighting tactic too. It really shows like the boxing background in him
yeah,
too, as well. Because like if you're going to like apply collar ties, the idea is that you pull them down, kind of. But in the process of pulling them down, you're kind of trying to break their posture or push them back. So Topuria turning them, well, like constantly moving them around is a great idea. In order to get out of those pretty
the
consistently.
exit was a bit scary because like he
Mhm.
did a good job of like lowering his level with his leg first, but he's still like docked down. Like, if Oliveira were to go for a knee in that moment, obviously it was a very fast sequence, and you gotta pick
Mhm.
your like risk that you're going to take.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there was like 3 instances of collar ties during this fight, and Topuria was like very quick to disengage. Like, he
Yeah.
was not interested in exploring that distance in this
Yeah, I
fight.
think like if you were to point to something Topuria kind of has the habit of doing, he tends to headhunt a lot more neutral space, as opposed to going to the body. And so that does lead to the incident of him going into those tie-ups quite a bit for that to happen. But it shows that he's aware of that and has an idea of how to quickly get out of those situations with discipline.
Yeah, so Oliveira then he didn't have like super easy access to the collar ties, so they were like engaging in boxing range for during the most of the fight, and it was clear that the idea for Oliveira was to fight the jab of Topuria with leg kicks, and he was very committed to attacking with leg kicks, even when he was getting hit with the jab. But I feel like during the jab leg kick exchange that there were a lot during the fight. Um, Topuria was getting the better of it. His
Yeah.
jab was landing with a bit more power than the leg kicks that Oliveira were landing.
Yeah, I published a big tech article breakdown, my first in a few years, on Topuria a few weeks ago, and two really specific things that stand out that were really relevant to this fight was, well, this is relevant to most of Topuria's fights, is his jab. It's very, very hard to punish that jab clean. It just part of it's just because he's good at disguising his steps as he jabs, but it's also just one of those jabs that comes out in the form of an up jab, and those are typically harder for people to punish, even though conventionally you wouldn't think that. Um, the other thing about Topuria is he has a great idea of how to do an offbeat rhythm with that jab, so
Yeah,
people can't really read it. And so even if you're trying to counter it, he's also still like doing little things like stepping in on you. And so even though Oliveira tried to make it like a my kick is going to beat your jab, it more so just became either we're evened out or Topuria would step in with the jab to kind of force Charles to reset.
yeah.
And
Also,
so
like, also it's something that Topuria was doing here is that because Topuria sometimes in other fights we've seen like just jabbing from his stance or stepping into jabs, but what he was doing here was like that he was like getting into right distance and he was like split stepping into the jab, and that was that was taking a little bit of a steam off the leg kicks because they were not landing in the place that Oliveira was like was supposed to. I mean, he was intending to land, so obviously those still hurt, but
mhm.
it's not the same when you land with the hardest part of your shin behind the knee, as opposed to when you're like because when I say split step, he was like opening his stance like, but staying like keeping his hips in place and taking his lead foot a little bit forwards and his back foot a little bit backwards. So it's splitting his stance, and he was doing that with his jab. He was hiding that because he was like again not doing as as obvious as in the Max Holloway fight, but there was still a lot of like bouncing back and forth within his stance in this one, especially because when he went to parry the front kick, he was like loading his weight into his rear foot, probably to come back with the right hand or the left hook. So that was interesting because he was like doing like the little like back and forth, and as you said, like he breaks the rhythm. So when you think he's going back, he goes like split step and he attacks with the jab, and that was very surprising for Oliveira.
Yeah. The other thing is like in regards to kicks themselves, like first and foremost, it should be said that everybody should be trying to kick Topuria no matter what.
Yeah,
But it's proven to be easier said than done because he has a couple of specific answers for them. One is we just said this. He's good at reading them with pairing off the hop step or leaning back on his rear foot. He's also very good at stepping in on them, which is he showcased with the jab in this
yeah,
fight. Right? And it's constantly something that really, really checkmated Volkanovski when they fought quite a bit. Because he would force out Volkanovski to try to kick first off of his punches and vice versa. And so every time Volk like stepped into a kick, he was off. He was still resetting his stance. That's when Topuria stepped in on him. And so Topuria recognizes how dangerous kicks are to him and likes to just constantly step in. Now, should you still be kicking at Topuria? 1000% yes. Like you need mix ups to get to him pretty
yeah.
consistently. The
In
other
fact,
problem,
I was surprised that Oliveira did not try to kick high here because Volkanovski was like obviously he was not hitting Topura with the high kicks, but he was like keeping him busy and controlling a bit of the initiative with the high kicks during the fight, and he threw quite a few. Actually, the first strike that Volkanovski threw against Topuria was a high kick. So
mhm.
I was kind of surprised that Topuria didn't. I mean, Oliveira didn't like test the waters with that one.
Yeah, I think Oliveira had the right idea though, because a lot of even though his kicks weren't getting through, he was still like pushing Topuria around. It's just he couldn't stop the jab from like drawing his defenses out enough, because the jab really played so much havoc on the rhythm of this fight here.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, and so one other thing I'll point to is like so with Topuria's like how Topuria typically deals with aggressors is he's even though like he does hop step back, that's not like an indication of like a linear retreat being bad at all. And a lot of people will make that mistake with him. It's only a problem if he's hop stepping into the fence, which doesn't really happen that often. And but here he showcased like a lot of good lateral defensive work using the jab as kind of a crux for it. Because if anyone was going to be able to cut him off and punish him in this division, it was going to be Oliveira. And here he at least showed that he's been competently thinking about like that lateral like movement on top of like using it to make sure the opponent can't get over aggressive and he can back them off.
Yeah, for sure. Although obviously like the parts that looked the more sketchy for Topuria were when he was put on the back foot for brief moments in this fight, but there it was still very clear that he had some tools, and we've seen that in the past, right? We saw like some prolonged exchanges where, I mean, periods where he was on the back foot against Josh Emmett, for example. And he has some like nice tools, especially he's very responsible with his footwork when he's jabbing. He's usually like pivoting with his jabs, sidestepping. So he has some tools, and the jab allows him to like not be corralled against the cage as easily. And he obviously can always like take a half step back and threaten with the big right hand, and that usually like gains him some time.
Yeah.
Let me get back with some of the comments. We have Ghost in the house. He says a split step into the jab. Interesting, since he was a split stepping cross countering with Max. Yeah, actually, he was using that a lot more for the jab here. Hello Nash. Hello Matua. So yeah, and then the end of the fight comes as like, I feel like Oliveira starts like, okay, I'm losing this at jabbing range. I need to like do something. And he like goes for the big right hand. Topuria split steps again. Goes with the like the fake left hook that kills the right hand of Oliveira, and lands this like loopy right hand that puts him out. He lands a left hook behind it that lands to the neck, and obviously that like super hurt, but he was out already. It was like a one-punch knockout for sure. And then the follow-up.
One thing I really liked, even though we pointed out like the whole elbow thing earlier, like I did read before this fight going into it saying like Oliveira needs to stand his ground 100%. And one thing he's particularly vicious at is how spiteful his counters are. He's not an amazing counterpuncher, but he's a great spiteful one on it picking his spots. And so that like shot right there immediately told me, okay, one of them is probably going to get finished in the next few minutes if it goes like this. But then like Topuria just like takes that slight step out and then shifts into that left hook to like back Oliveira off slightly, just enough to prevent any follow-ups. But I think like right there, that sequence kind of taught Oliveira, okay, I can exchange with you, but it's going to be really dangerous. So I need to look for the collar ties. And then eventually that kind of didn't work. So he shot for the takedown and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and the entry, I mean, the timing for that entry for the takedown was pretty good actually. One of the few like super clean reads of the jab that Oliveira got, and he ducked under. He went for his classic like tall man through the box takedown, where he tries to run you over for like a waist body lock, and when that doesn't work, he usually goes underhook knee tap. He was not successful with either of them, so he drove to the fence. Very strong double underhooks. Topuria did a very good job of staying low, just like not allowing his weight to be distributed, using the fence to his advantage there, because he was like leaning on the fence, staying heavy. And the moment that Oliveira was like a bit loose with one of the underhooks, he dug for an under. They ended up 50-50. Oliveira tries to circle him, pinch the side of the overhook, and try to get like an outside trip, I think. And Topuria just follow with the hips, plants with the free hand, uses the other hook, ends up on top position. And then he goes for that beautiful like crucifix immediately, and that was like just for the style points, I feel. Oliveira obviously showed up that doesn't matter if you get that kind. Doesn't matter if you get those kind of positions, because he's so resourceful. He moved into the legs immediately. Topuria was able to get to top position. Nothing ended up happening, but it was like I think that even though like Oliveira looked like the dangerous guy in that sequence, to me it was Topuria sending the message like uh, takedown is not game over for it's not game over for me,
Yeah,
man.
it's not free, and also him competing that physically with Oliveira, who's historically pretty physical guy, who usually if he gets his arms locked like that, you're going for a ride. That's pretty impressive in of itself. Um, Live, I was a little more impressed with like kind of how he ended up on top, but in on rewatch, it wasn't really. It was a little messy on Oliveira's side, but it's still like being able to cut through Oliveira's guard like that is still pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
on
what?
my preview I said that Topuria needed to land like if he got on top, he really needed the ground and pound
Mm,
because one thing that we've seen on the last few years is that Oliveira is not the same when he feels like he has to be scared of the takedown. He becomes like a different fighter, and in that sense, he's kind of similar to someone like Dustin Poirier, with the difference that obviously Oliveira is a much better grappler. So the cases in which he's scared of getting taken down are are way fewer than for Dustin,
mhm.
but it's kind of the same concept, right?
Yeah.
That you're like a balls to the wall striker, but when you think that you gotta be worried about the takedown, you're kind of different. We saw that against, especially against in the Sarukian fight for Oliveira,
Hmm.
where
Yeah. What?
Sarukian was like Sarukian never looked like he would win a pure striking match against Oliveira, but once he had that takedown threat established, he was like backing up Oliveira with the jab because you know he was thinking about the takedown.
Yeah. One interesting thing that I wish we could have seen play out a little more is I do think Taporia can be at risk of being a bit passive with his back to the wall on the fence when he's pitted there in the clinch. However, we didn't really get to see how that would play out because he was like doing the like I think if memory serves me right, the overhooks to Oliveira's underhooks to kind of stifle that. So if Oliveira attempted to break the body lock, it wouldn't really have mattered too much. But I still, that was definitely something I wish I could have seen, like how he could have coped with Oliveira's like wall and maul tactic.
Yeah, I was very interested in seeing that actually. Like I would have wondered instead of the takedown, what would happen if like Oliveira tried to like get some head pressures, try to stand him up, and go
Mm-hmm.
with nasty knees. I
Yeah,
really
that's
wanted to see more knees actually.
yeah. One thing, and we're probably jumping ahead a bit here, is I do think that makes Makachev still very interesting because Makachev, like, he's willing to like use like turning the same way Topuria does with like clinching in order to land successful like transitions and attacks. So he's not like the wall and maul kind of guy, but his clinch still offers a very interesting kind of thing that Topuria didn't face here.
Yeah, and also like the thing about Makhachev is that a lot of like his obviously he's a very good like pure grappler, but in the context of MMA, he uses knees so much because he loves countering knees, going for like turning on the knee tap, that kind of stuff. We saw a lot of that against Volkanovski and against Sarukian, two very like sturdy wrestlers, kind of similar to Topuria defensively and in their complexion, right? So
Mm.
that would be something very interesting to see. And also, obviously, that Makhachev is a southpaw. So sadly, that's probably not the next fight that we're going to see, even though it's
No,
like the best
it,
fight in the sport that you can make.
it's the most compelling. It was before this, but this made it more compelling, frankly. Yeah, I mean, Taporia is on a ridiculous streak. Like, no matter how much you can say about, I think Volk, Max, and Oliveira looking a little past their best here, still showed up for all these fights, and he met them tactic for tactic and beat them. I
Yeah,
think that's.
I think Oliveira showed up fine here. I
Mhm.
cannot blame him for not being able to like take the hit because it was a very clean punch, and
Yep.
the it was a fight where both guys were like willing to, not like they were willing to get finished, but they were like, okay, this is my best shot and I'm going to take it, and like it just went Topuria's way. I'm not saying that it was like a lucky finish. I feel
I
like
feel like this is a fight where even though like Taporia got the better of it, it's still a fight where it's very margins of difference with how dangerous both guys are.
exactly. Let me get back to the chat a little bit. Uh, Matua says you're eloquent. Subscribe and like. Hey, I appreciate that a lot. James Kendrick says how would Topuria be if he added a potent Matt Brown clinch game? Would he no longer be Topuria? I mean, that's a lot of depth to add to a fighter. Like obviously it would be fantastic, but yeah, I mean you have just limited time. Obviously Topuria has dedicated a lot of his time in other areas. Not that he's a bad clinch fighter, but he has specialized otherwise. If he had like that kind of clinch game, he would be like. I mean, he already is one of the best ever, despite like being so young in his career. So having that on top would be like kind of crazy. Who has scared Ilia with the takedown? Nobody so far. To be quite honest, like we saw Bryce Mitchell like taking him down, and he didn't give a shit on the second round.
Yeah, the thing about Topuria is like you have to be able to outposition him or back him off with an equalizer, and not really anyone's been able to do that pretty consistently.
That's the one thing is that Topura is a very good like pure wrestler, but on top of that, his footwork allows him to always be in good position to defend takedowns. So I think like if you're going to take Topuria down, it's probably going to be in a more like chain wrestling kind of way, or maybe some clinch positioning. That's what makes the Makhachev fight so interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I still maintain the way to get to Topuria with like grappling things is intercepting him with clinches, and Oliveira did that here. So maybe somebody who targets like the body lock or goes for the diving intercepting takedowns can get more success there. Maybe turning the pipe on that one, so to speak. But
the Bryce Mitchell takedown was a reactive one, and that was a very good read.
Yeah.
So
the other thing is like you can still like draw his head movement with throwaways up close and then shoot for a takedown. That I think is going to be pretty key.
If someone would be able to, I think that one viable tactic would be. We have mentioned how Topuria loads his way back when he's defending kicks, because he likes to load for the counter there. That would be a good place to go for a takedown. So if you could use like kicks to stand Topuria up and load his way back, then you might be able to shoot under that.
You're gonna laugh at this, but I think like some of Johnny Hendricks's flurries into leg kick tactics would be a good idea. Well, the leg kick flurry tactics he used against Lawler's defense would do well.
Yeah, for the lower one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the kind of mix-ups you need to get to Topuria's footworks. It does not mean it's going to be easier said than done, because you got to watch out for those backstep counters he loves. But in order to beat him, you either need to figure out how to have answers for his positioning.
Another style that I think would be interesting for Topuria would be someone, but this is a very particular style that almost nobody has. But it would be like GSP when he was committing to outfighting, because he could like jab with him, use the inside leg kick to neutralize the lead leg, and then like frustrate him into like big right hands so he could go for the reactive takedown.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest to that we have seen was like when both were like kind of green. But Yusuf Salal showed a lot of on that third round. He showed that out movement mixed with the kicks, mixed with the takedowns could maybe work against Topuria. Obviously, Topuria has improved a lot, but he has been like building onto that same style. So he has been like on somewhat of a linear path in that sense, right?
Yeah, I still like there are still like definite like holes to get to Topuria for sure. Like, but it's easier said than done. That's just how it is with this kind of sport. Or like, there's no way with how like diverse everyone is that you're never gonna not have weaknesses or things to exploit. But it comes down to being able to navigate those margins and having answers, so on and so forth.
So what is next for Topuria? That's the big question, because like Dana White said he doesn't want Sarukian, even though Sarukian was the backup fighter for this fight. He doesn't want Paddy either. And like, we know that Paddy doesn't deserve it, but it's like, it is a huge fight, right?
Yeah.
we cannot complain about like big fights. They might be annoying, but they're good for the sport, and it would be a huge fight. And to be quite honest, like Paddy is also like a somewhat interesting style matchup because he's like super big. He's uh he's a kicker. He might not be like a dangerous kicker like Oliveira, but he's a lot more committed to being like passive and safe in open space. Even though he's not as good defensively, just the thing that Paddy doesn't want to put himself in danger can make for an interesting fight against a shorter boxer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Paddy, first and foremost, is better than I ever thought he would be a
Yeah,
few years ago.
when he got to the UFC, he was not this good. One of those
No,
cases
he
of guys that was like
well, you,
pretty deep into his career and got to the UFC and still improved, which
I
is like
I
commendable.
distinctly remember like thinking to myself, like, wait, what is his process here? How did it's like question mark? Oh, we're on the ground, and now there's like a clear process to like getting
Yeah,
guys there.
you know that Paddy's now better because it's a lot easier to break him down now.
Yeah, and like actually has counters and ways to get people to the floor where he is proven to be pretty dangerous, more or less, admittedly. Yeah, I think like that kind of like thing can be dangerous. It's just a serious question of okay, is Topuria going to recognize when those counters are coming out, see how diverse they are, and draw them out, and then punish him for it? That's who knows, but yeah, Patty being like decently tough as nails apparently it makes it interesting. But Topuria proved he can navigate like 5 rounds against lethal opponents before, so
Yeah,
who knows?
Topuria obviously can knock out anyone. Like
Obviously, at this point,
you give him like you give Topuria a free shot on any of the heavyweights on the roster, and I think he puts them all down. Like, but Paddy like has an insane shin because
apparently,
he made in that fight that we all thought he lost against Jared Gordon, like he made Gordon look like he's pillow fisted, and like Gordon is not a huge puncher, but he has very good pop in his hands, and he was like eating those for breakfast in that fight, man. Like
um,
that is tough, especially considering that he holds his chin so high, man.
yeah, yeah. The other thing is like Topuria will obviously have to punch up against him, and
Yeah, that
but
can rob you of some power sometimes.
yeah, but who knows? Patty's footwork hasn't particularly impressed me, so
Yeah, the footwork is the most concerning part.
yeah. So I'm not really inclined to pick Patty, but I do think he can offer a few interesting looks. I can say I think many of the top lightweights can. Would I pick many of them? Probably not. But I think everyone, like the chain wrestling of Sarukian and then Gamrot, if they can get there, the keyword being if, can get there, I think offers some things. But lightweight's also in a weird place because there's so much like veterans who are aging out at this point. It's just been in a weird transitional phase, it seems, for a while now. So
Yeah,
who
and
knows?
with the whole thing of being champion in the weight below, like Topuria got to like not fight anyone young in lightweight, getting to the top, which is interesting. Um, so yeah, the rumors apparently about Paddy versus Gagey aren't true. Which I kind of like that fight, to be honest.
Yeah, why not?